Scott Simpson.
I move the question be now put.
I'm just checking whether anyone else was seeking the call, and if there wasn't, oh, there was. Sir William Seal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Green member, Eugenie Sage, has put in a range of amendments which the Labour Party supports. Eugenie Sage also said that those amendments were in response to submissions made by the public. And I simply make reference to one group that made submission on a range of clause 16, clause 7, clause 12, clause 13, and that is a group called the Environmental and Conservative Organisation of Aotearoa. This is a group that has existed since 1972. It is an umbrella body for environmental organisations the length and breadth of New Zealand. And so I know the Minister has responded and rejected the points made by Eugenie Sage that there is a need for independence. And I'll tell you why, sir. If you look at clause 7, bar 2, choosing the national international standards to measure against, the Environmental Conservative Organisation of Aotearoa made the point, who gets to choose these international standards? Because by all evidence, based on this bill, it will be the Minister or it will be the Secretary that will make this decision. And they feel, sir, and I believe the mood that they were in, is that whenever the Minister or the head of the department is involved, it's a political environment. And invariably, they are susceptible to political pressures that could be put upon them. Clause 12 and 18 talks about choosing the topics to be reported. Again, sir, this organisation submitted that they felt there was no independence, and in order for these reporting to be independent, to have some integrity so that the public can believe the information that is contained in these reports, it requires independent assessment. And one of the things these scientists submitted, sir, is scientists have other scientists critique their work, so independent is necessary. And what they're saying, sir, is the way the bill is drafted as it stands, there is too much room for political independence so that there is no oversight as to what topics will be reported upon, the contents of those reports, because I think the House fails to recognise these are simply reporting. These are reports that get tabled. The real crux of the matter comes whether the government of the day acts on the contents of that particular report. But presently, as it stands, it's simply reports. And so those in the environmental community do not feel that the way that the bill sits at the moment provides sufficient confidence to them in order for the public to have confidence that this is genuine, real, substantial information, and that the follow-up work by the government today is to act upon that information. If the information is not provided, sir, then the government can rightly say, well, why should we act on it if that information is not provided? So in terms of the submissions made by the supplementary order paper made by Eugenie Sage, sir, I absolutely agree, and we support it on this side of the House, because the big questions that remain to be answered is how do we guarantee that the information reported on can be independent, accurate, and trusted by the New Zealand public. And when ECO, or the Environmental and Conservative Organisation of Aotearoa, made their submission, they felt there was just too many loopholes in the legislation as it sits for the minister or the relevant minister to provide political pressure, even political pressure, sir, not to report or not to provide the information that may assist the government of the day in making decisions that then follow, that those decisions will be aimed at protecting our environment. So Even the Ombudsman's Office in a letter agrees that there is a need to preserve the independence of the reporting process from ministers. And that was a submission made. So with relation to Clause 12, Clause 18, Clause 7 to Mr. Chairman.
Sir William Seal.
Mr. Chairman, I want to restate that point, that is for that reason, sir, this side of the House would not be prepared, because without the freedom, without the independence nature of that reporting, the governments of the day can choose for themselves what gets reported, the contents of that report. I want to just come back to a comment that Mr. Paul Foster-Bell said earlier about saying that he believed that the activities of New Zealand and the way that those activities might contribute to the climate impacts in the Pacific region will be minuscule. I think that's negligible. Okay, sir. Let me just say, sir, that in a report by the World Bank, which calls "Turn Down the Heat."
Order.
Sir.
Order. I'm going to ask the member to sit down and draw his attention to the fact that he is now wandering way out into the substance of climate change, further than the member did, and much less about measuring in New Zealand, which is the substance of this bill. Sir William Seal.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
A point of order, the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I seek leave of the House, given the length of time we've had on these committee stages, and us nearly approaching a vote, for at the conclusion of the member's speech, for all of the votes to be taken on the committee stages, so that the votes can logically follow on from the time of the debate.
I'm just going to point out to member the obvious problem with that is that the member's speech will not conclude tonight. Unless he sits down, of course. Sir William Seal.
I merely wanted to come back to my amendment, sir, which is still in part 2, which is adding on that particular clause, and that's the point that I wanted to say, that
I regret that time has come for me to report progress, and for that reason I have to interrupt the member. I will therefore report progress. You could only do that.
Members, the House has resumed. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the House has considered the Harmful Digital Communications Bill and reports it with amendment. The committee has also considered the Environmental Reporting Bill and reports progress. The committee has not considered the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Bill and therefore reports no progress. Mr. Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The Harmful Digital Communications Bill was set. The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The Harmful Digital Communications Bill is set down for third reading next sitting day, and the Environmental Reporting Bill and the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Amendment Bill are set down for further consideration in committee next sitting day. And members, the House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow. Good evening.